Wait, police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
This is a 13-year case, so as you saw, we have a great deal of information, evidence, photographs, reports.
This case is a case that we're going to try in the courtroom. The press has convicted my client without seeing a shred of evidence.
She had no idea any of this was going on, or the allegations were even her husband was a suspect.
The charges in the indictment are just allegations, so this is the first step in the process of proving those allegations.
The case of the so-called Long Island Gilgo Beach serial killer is one that's grabbed headlines from the beginning. I mean, even going back to when, at first, all of these victims were found, and then the case went unsolved, and then there was controversy with the police department, some corruption there, and it took forever. But then the case finally broke, and a new task force was able to arrest this man, who's been charged now with 6 victims. 6 victims: Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, Maureen Barnes, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Castilla. And 2 more just added. And you don't know how many more he's responsible for, so there's still a lot of interest in this defendant in this case. By the way, he and his attorney have denied all these allegations, as has really his family, who doesn't believe that he is capable of this. So they're the ones on the outside, the family of the accused Long Island killer. So there's been a spotlight on them for many reasons. They're the ones closest to the suspect. They were living with this man in a very small home in a very nice community. We understand that there's a Peacock series that's being produced as this case is progressing that will give us insight down the road, probably more to what they're thinking. And the house that they all lived in may very well be the scene of some of the murders here. So you put all that together, there's a lot of attention on the family. But there's even more attention being put on them now by someone who's been a guest on our show many, many times. And I'm going to speak with him right now. Joining us, the attorney representing the family of victim Shannon Gilbert, who still has not been officially connected to this killer, but is the reason that this case has progressed because of her. John Ray is back with us. John, nice to see you tonight.
You too, Vinny.
So you go on social media, and all of a sudden, John Ray is making people talk again. And this one probably is the most controversial thing that you've talked about so far, and you've been talking about the daughter of the suspected Long Island serial killer. And some folks are upset about it. Some folks are really upset about it. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain what you were talking about at your last, I guess, press conference that you had, and what is driving what you're doing now.
Okay, well, to lead off, what I'm saying, first of all, is that with the facts and circumstances that are now known, including the various sites that Victoria was looking at on her computer and certain other things she said, all put together, this whole thing, she is not outside the circle of suspects involved in some way in this case and should be looked at with suspicion and should be further investigated. That's all I've said. Now, I say that I know there are a lot of people who are angry. These are the people who they exalt victimhood above all things and don't pay attention to the facts. And that what they're saying is essentially absurd. That is that this girl who stands by her father as we speak, the man who chopped up those girls, who had no regard for them whatsoever, she is somehow not to be spoken about other than as a victim herself, when that's just not the case. So they don't like that. They just want to make her a victim regardless, and so they say all kinds of terrible things about me. They rage.
No, they do.
I was on here the other night that were screaming and shouting about me the whole time. But I'm not the issue. The facts are and the circumstances are the issue.
So what
we discovered in my team?
if you can go through some of the things that you, and give us like what you found and how it was found and how this is now part of this case or investigation from your perspective.
Okay, well, I assembled a group of people who are really good at diving down into the computer, into these programs and seeing what was there. I don't have that capacity nor that skill, so they do it. And what we did, we discovered that Victoria, contrary to the way she's posed her image so far on the in the public, has been looking at certain really awful, ferocious sites containing some of the worst things that humankind can conceive. And these sites they're on a thing called Valira, and this I don't know all the details as to if you ask me to explain how Valira works and so forth. They show deviant art. They show some of the worst art you can imagine, and words that accompany that art. And I've published both of them to the public via my press conference. She's looking at cannibalism. She's looking at people being chopped up, bodies being hacked to pieces. She's looking at people disemboweling women. She's looking at all kinds of things that are what her father appears to have done. That's what she's looking at. And she's looking at these things going back for years before we knew that this man was a killer. So she's no doubt raised as a little girl since kindergarten when the first murder we know of occurred, up through the years. She is, in that sense, she's a victim of her family in raising her in this disgraceful, disgusting situation that no human can tolerate. That's an atrocity. But once you say that, she's not the same as the victims who were chopped up, who are dead, and who suffered through torture. And she's not the victims of the families who see their little baby and their sister dismembered and left to die like that. She is not that kind of a victim. She stands with the man who did this as we speak. And here's some of the things that she said on July 14th, 2023, when Rex Heuermann was first arraigned. She's on the computer, and there's those who say, oh, you don't know if that's really true, that's her. It could be one of these trolls. It could be a troll, but when you connect the dots, it sure doesn't sound like it's a troll. And here's what she said, quote, "Dad, rate my art," unquote. She's counts the, and she's not concerned about that. She'd rather have her art rated at the moment. And then she signs herself. The name she uses is Lisk Daughter, L-I-S-K daughter. Now, that means she's proud of the fact that she's the daughter of the Lisk, and she's admitting, if you understand it, that he's the killer. L-I-S-K stands for Long Island Serial Killer. So this is not the nice person, little victim, sad victim. It's sad what happened to her, but she herself is not developed in that way. And she's never broken with her parents like most of the rest of the world has done as they grow up.
Now, I just want to point, John, I have to point out to our audience, number one, we haven't independently investigated any of this. We are reporting what you are investigating and the allegations that you are making tonight. What I wanted you to do, though, we just have a moment here, because you did mention that we had guests on last time you were on. I want to play one of the things that Bob Macedonio did say, and this is the attorney for the accused killer's wife, and give you an opportunity to respond to what he said.
The more TV time you give him, the more he comes up with. This is Rex Heuermann is the third suspect that John Ray is accused of committing these crimes. His one and only client, Shannon Gilbert, is not part of the Gilgo Beach homicide victims. It was an accidental death ruled by the Suffolk County Homicide Squad over and over and over again. He's not accepting that. The task force that Ray Tierney has put together in this, exceptional. The work they're doing is exceptional. They've dismissed John Ray as almost irrelevant in this act. So he had his press conference, Rodney Harrison, the former police commissioner. the DA gave a scathing response to that. We have to stop giving him so much airtime. I know it's made good for TV, but he's becoming reckless. He wants my client to sue him.
Okay, John, your response to the accusations from Bob.
This is a public case, these are public cases. I'm on TV because I have information and I represent victims. I represent not only Shannon Gilbert's family, but I represent other victims who have escaped Rex Heuermann, who were taunted and chased by him and managed to survive. For long months, I represented the Jessica Taylor family. So this, the idea that I'm on TV putting out what should be put out, that's what you do when you have a case like this. Just like Mr. Macedonio and Mr. Matev are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by Peacock to represent their clients and appear on TV. I'm paid zero. I'm doing this for a good cause. They're doing it for the money. And indeed, when we speak about Victoria, she gave up any chance, and I said this at my press conference, of saying that we should consider her as a hapless victim when she took all that money from Peacock to be followed around and to have her persona exposed as she wants it to be. Look at the picture that she first had taken of her when she first met the press. She's standing there in little schoolgirl clothes with a little schoolgirl bag on it and a nice little bun on her hair. But look at the other Victoria, who she herself published it. I published it for you. She's Gothic. There's nothing wrong, per se, with being Gothic. But don't come and try to fool the public as to what you are, like this little innocent schoolgirl. She wasn't, and she never was. Here's what she also said. When she's the Lisk daughter and she puts out her art, think about this. On the day her father is accused of this atrocious murder of 3 girls that at the time, her thought is, check out my art. That's her thought. She scrubbed her. If she's innocent, why did she run right out and hire a lawyer? She didn't need a lawyer at that point before I even was heard on it. And why did she scrub down all her social media? Do you do that if you have nothing to hide?
John?
Something's really up here.
We're out of time for tonight, but we appreciate you coming on.
Right.
Wanted to understand these accusations that you were making and the motivation behind it. We appreciate your time. We'll speak again, I'm sure, as this case continues to develop. When we come back, we'll hear from the other side. Victoria's attorney, Ves Mitev, who's been with us many times on this, will join us to give his response, his position, and explain his client's perspective on what's going on here. That's next.
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV. This week on Opening Statements.
Karen Reed's murder case making national headlines, and each morning we'll get you ready for trial before the day's proceedings.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
How are you holding up? I know you can't talk about the case. How are you holding up?
What you see, right? It is what it is.
How's your children doing?
Not doing those in that one. Not going there.
The accused Long Island serial killer, that's his wife, who was outside his home. Matt Johnson was there when this story was all breaking about the arrest. He has 2 children, and now here to respond to the allegations made by John Ray, the attorney representing the children of the accused killer. Ves Mitev is back with us. Ves, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Do you want to just respond, or do you want me to give you specific things to respond to? Because I want to give you an opportunity to give you and your client's side of everything that's going on here.
Well, thank you. I think the allegations are just that. They're delusional, they're deranged, and what's alleged without evidence should also be discounted without evidence. And unfortunately, as I said, and it's been widely quoted, I mean, this is nothing more than a continued frivolous sideshow by someone with no clients involved in this case. His one and only client was ruled to be a suicide after his press conference last week. I think Shannon Gilbert, the last surviving sister, was on social media distancing herself entirely, saying she did not agree with anything that he was saying. She had no knowledge of the press conference, that, you know, she was done with that attorney and his firm. So again, what do we have here? We have, you know, all these things that he's come up with, the circle of suspicion. Well, the DA deals with the rhombus of evidence, and that evidence, according to the district attorney's office, has explicitly excluded both of my clients as well as Miss Ellerup. And we could say that until we're blue in the face, but apparently it falls on some people's deaf ears, because people that listen to this carnival sideshow, they buy it. And there's been money donated to the GoFundMe that I'm being told now has happened as a result of this. And again, you have zero evidence of any of this. You just heard, you know, I think you just heard him remark about certain art or what have you. I'll say this. Obviously, Victoria is interested in art. She was an art aficionado. She went, you know, she took art classes. She, you know, was two of her favorite artists are Francis Bacon and Hieronymus Bosch, who, of course, his famous painting is the triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights. And Francis Bacon, you know, if you read anything about him, he dealt in what was called the brutality of fact. And some of his art deals with the exact same things, and it's, you know, that he talks about. But of course, these are two of the most famous artists that ever lived. They're revered. They're studied by art historians. So, you know, to link those somehow is completely reckless. It's defamatory. It's irresponsible. I could go on and on and on, but suffice it to say that nothing of what he has said has any basis in fact whatsoever. If there was any basis in fact, the district attorney, the law enforcement task force that's been tasked with this, not conspirators on the internet, amateur sleuths, cosplaying investigators, people that have no idea what's going on, except for apparently they are all unified by this, you know, almost otherworldly desire to get on TV and get on Reddit and social media and make unfounded claims with no consequence. That's all you have here. So I'm chagrined that I'm even here to respond to this, but that's the response, which is there is no response necessary because it is a carnival sideshow. And you talk about social media, the explosion on social media is where the groundswell is. Can you give us an idea of what Victoria's life, day-to-day life is like right now? Well, once again, she's squarely in the crosshairs of the media spotlight, and now she's being talked about, you know, as if she was a ritualistic, demonic cannibalizer. That's what was said about her at that press conference. And going back till 2023, almost a year, the same drumbeat has been repeating, you know, with respect to her mother as well, by the same attorney who has alleged that they're all part of a criminal conspiracy. He's actually said that. So these are all, again, defamatory statements. They're defamatory per se. They seem only to be made with the intent of getting a lawsuit brought upon this person. But and of course that would only allow it would further engender his ability to sort of occupy the spotlight. So that's not something that, you know, my clients are interested in at this point, but all options are on the table. But as far as her everyday life, it is a hard scrabble existence. It is sad. You would not, you know, a lot of talk about her not being a victim, but I couldn't possibly disagree more. She has currently no father. She is obviously being made into an internet pariah by this gentleman and his cohorts completely unfairly before an even ounce of actual evidence has been produced. They live in the same, you know, very small, very upturned house that they've lived in the whole time, and their neighbors all know who they are. And I've said this before on the show, you and I would have crumbled a long time ago, and we would have been swept away, because even waking up in the morning is tough enough on an everyday existence, but to wake up in the morning and not to know whether or not the police are going to raid your house again, not to know whether somebody's going to go on TV in a press conference and accuse you of taking part in demonic rituals without any evidence, not to know when and if your father, if he's ever convicted or if he's not convicted, what's the the fallout going to be from that? It's unimaginable. And You know, the zinger about the money that's allegedly been given, or the Peacock documentary, I mean, again, that's neither here nor there. That's just, again, it seems to have been made for no other purpose other than to further defame and further impugn Victoria's character, which, again, as far as I'm concerned, it's unimpeachable. That and of Chris, of course, her brother, and they're under the yoke. Okay, there's a heavy yoke that's draped over both these young adults' shoulders, and that is that all of the evidence is stacked against their father. But it's only that; it's in the court of public opinion. There's been no conviction yet, and again, we've maintained that until and if there is that, they're going to continue to put one foot in front of the other and keep going down this very dark path, unfortunately for them. But it is no picnic, Vinny. I would not wish this on anybody, and unfortunately, again, by the mere fact that they exist, they've now been easy targets for this attorney, and again for his cadre of internet sleuths and people that hide behind TV screens and avatars and pseudonyms that feel free to tee off on them with no repercussions.
Ves Mitev, the attorney representing the family of the accused Long Island serial killer. Thank you so much for joining us. Always like to present all perspectives and have an opportunity to respond to what is happening in a large amount on social media. Thanks so much, Ves.
Thank you.